For 5 seasons, The Brady Bunch was America's most famous example of a good family comedy. It left an indelible mark on the history of TV. Fans from all over the country watched every week because they thought the comedy was completely clean. However, in one of the show's most famous episodes, there was a shocking and controversial moment that network executives could not ignore. The anger that followed grew so quickly behind closed doors that the whole show was abruptly taken off the air, shocking millions of loyal viewers. Which taboo scene was thought way too scandalous to be shown? Come with us as we talk about everything. A simple scene that turned into the Brady Bunch's biggest scandal. The Brady Bunch was the perfect family sitcom for years, according to TV producers. It was clean, happy, and full of lessons about life. At the end, Mike and Carol Brady would always lead their 6 kids back to the right road. People thought the Brady family was the ideal American family. It was hard to believe that one scene, which at first glance seemed harmless, would become so controversial that it threw the show into an unplanned storm. At first glance, what seemed like a normal family moment would be remembered for going too far, which was something that TV wasn't ready to accept. In a strange way, the polished picture that people liked wasn't the whole story. Away from the cameras, the group went through the same tough situations that many young Hollywood stars did at the time. There were rumors of drug use, hidden relationships between cast members, fights over creative choices, and personal problems that were never shown on TV. Every Friday night, the Brady family seemed perfect, but life behind the scenes was a lot more complicated than people thought. The Brady Bunch, which debuted on ABC in September 1969, was created by television director Sherwood Schwartz. It was about a blended family getting used to living together. An architect named Mike Brady, played by Robert Reed, married a woman named Carol Martin, played by Florence Henderson. Together they had 6 children from their past relationships, along with their faithful housekeeper Alice Nelson and their dog Tiger, Greg, Peter, Bobby, Marcia, Jan, and Cindy made up one of the most recognizable families on TV. The show only had 5 seasons before it ended in 1974, but it became a huge hit in reruns, and families of all generations have been watching it for decades. Florence Henderson's warm performance as Carol Brady was a big part of the show's success. She helped define the ideal TV mom. Still, people who knew her well often talked about a woman whose sense of humor was much more naughty than people thought it would be. According to Lloyd Schwartz, the son of the show's author, Sherwood Schwartz, Henderson knew exactly what Carol Brady meant to viewers and was always friendly to fans when they came up to her. But when she wasn't filming, she liked to joke around in ways that would have surprised people who only knew her from the show. The idea for the Brady Bunch came from a place you might not expect. Sherwood Schwartz remembered reading in the newspaper that almost 1/3 of marriages involved children from a previous relationship. That one fact made him want to make a TV show about a blended family. Even the networks turned down the idea at first. After Yours, Mine, and Ours did well and got ABC to finally give Schwartz's idea a chance, everything changed. The risk paid off in a big way, but years later, a short morning scene would hurt the show's perfect reputation, which it had worked so hard to get. The painful truth about how the Brady Bunch was cast. Before people met the Brady family, Sherwood Schwartz was already working on an incredibly hard puzzle. He didn't know if Mike and Carol Brady would be blondes or brunettes, because the actors who would play them hadn't been picked yet. Schwartz didn't want to limit his choices, so he tried out 12 kids instead of 6. He chose 3 blonde boys, 3 dark-haired boys, 3 blonde girls, and 3 brown girls. Once the parents were chosen, the hair colors of the kids would just match them. Schwartz later made a joke that somewhere in the world, 6 players who just missed making the cast found out years later that they were so close to joining TV's most famous family. Appearances still had to be carefully changed after the final cast was chosen. If Mike Lukenland had been born strawberry blonde, he would have been Bob Brady. Once Robert Reed was cast as the dark-haired Mike Brady, Lukenland had to get his hair dyed over and over again to make him look like his TV father. For Susan Olsen, things were even more difficult. Cindy's hair was naturally blonde, but the producers wanted it to look even lighter on camera, so they bleached it all the time while they were filming. At some point, the process hurt a lot, because Olsen's hair was bleached so often chunks of it started falling out during the 2nd season. Because the damage was upsetting her, she went to Sherwood Schwartz and asked him to stop the crew from changing her hair right away. The small but important event served as a reminder that making TV's perfect family sometimes had very real effects on the young actors who played those roles. The way Olsen talks in real life was also used in the show. She naturally had a lisp, and instead of trying to hide it, the writers used it in the episode A Fistful of Reasons, in which Cindy is picked on by Buddy Hinton, a mean kid at school, who makes fun of the way she talks. Olsen kept working with speech therapists behind the scenes for years until she finally had surgery that helped fix the problem. It was just as interesting to play the Brady parents. To find someone to play Mike Brady before Robert Reed did, Sherwood Schwartz wanted to talk to Gene Hackman about the part. Studio executives quickly turned down the idea, saying Hackman wasn't well known enough on TV to draw people in. Reed, who was already under contract with Paramount and well known to viewers from The Defenders, was seen as the safer choice. In a strange twist, Hackman became one of Hollywood's biggest stars in The French Connection. Just a year after the first episode of The Brady Bunch aired, This showed how wrong those early predictions were. The woman who almost took Florence Henderson's place. Before the show even began, one of the most important choices that shaped the Brady Bunch was made. People can't picture anyone else playing the loving Carol Brady beside Florence Henderson, but Henderson wasn't supposed to play the part at first. There were times when comedic actress Joyce Bulifant was so close to getting the part that she did screen tests with many of the child players. Sherwood Schwartz first thought of Mrs. Brady as a more silly and over-the-top mother, based on Lucille Ball's lively performance in Yours, Mine, and Ours. Bulifant seemed like the best choice at the time. The plan changed almost overnight when Emmy-winning actress Ann B. Davis joined the show as Alice, the funny housekeeper for the Brady family. Davis naturally made every scene funny, which helped Schwartz see that the show didn't need an odd mother figure anymore. Instead, the family needed someone who could give them comfort, security, and emotional balance. That understanding made room for Florence Henderson, whose calm and caring presence became one of the series' most important traits. Bulifant, on the other hand, had her own successful TV career, showing that not being on the Brady Bunch didn't slow her down at all. The news did talk about Henderson's life outside of acting. One rumor that stuck around for decades said she was dating Barry Williams, who played her on-screen son Greg Brady. The rumors grew after Williams wrote in his autobiography that he had a crush on his on-screen mother when he was a teenager. After thinking about it, he said that his feelings were mostly innocent love and a desire to spend time with someone he liked. They did have dinner together once, but it wasn't nearly as scandalous as later tales made it sound. Williams wasn't old enough to drive yet, 16 years old, so his older furry brother took him to the restaurant. The rumor was later shot down by Henderson, who said that Barry might have seen it as a date, but she didn't. From her point of view, it was just a fun outing with a young co-star whose respect had grown wildly over the years. In a strange twist, Williams found love much closer to home in the end. During filming, he dated Maureen McCormick for a short time. She played his TV sister Marcia. In later interviews, McCormick said that kissing the actor who played her brother felt very strange, even though everyone knew they weren't related. Henderson wasn't around for the first 6 episodes because she was still shooting Song of Norway in Denmark, which made the start of the show even stranger. Before she knew it, she was back in the United States playing the part that would make her one of TV's most beloved moms. She joined the Brady family just as people were starting to love the show. How problems off-screen shattered the Brady Bunch's perfect image. Every week, the Brady Bunch showed the perfect American family, but life behind the cameras was often not nearly as beautiful. As the young actors grew up in the public eye, they went through many of the same problems and fears that teens across the country do, but with millions of people watching them every move. Afterward, Barry Williams, who played Greg Brady, the oldest brother, said that he occasionally tried weed while hanging out with friends when he was 15. Williams thought he had the day off one afternoon, so he smoked before getting a call from the studio telling him he had to come back right away to reshoot scenes for the episode, Law and Disorder. He did show up as asked, but it was clear right away that something wasn't right. People on the crew saw him stumble across the driveway. His eyes looked cloudy, and it became surprisingly hard for him to say even a few easy lines. Producers quickly rewrote parts of the script to make the problem less important by reducing Greg's role in the episode. Years later, Williams admitted it was a mistake and said he would never show up to work high again. He finally learned that marijuana made him feel anxious, irritable, and hungry. Not all problems were caused by bad choices. The actor who played Peter Brady, Christopher Knight, had a much bigger problem in his personal life. Some of his young co-stars were naturally good at singing, but Knight was honest about the fact that music was not one of his strengths. Musical episodes stopped being fun and started being scary. During shows, he was often told to lip-sync while the other singers did their parts. In the end, the writers chose to use his weakness as a plot device in the episode Do Re Mi, where Peter's voice change became a joke. Even back then, Knight had trouble singing the notes that were meant to be awkward, so director Howard Leeds had to record many of his lines. As time went on, Knight admitted that it was very embarrassing and said that week was his first experience with depression. After the Brady Bunch ended, Maureen McCormick had an even tougher task to fight. She was only 14 years old when the show first aired, and the picture of Marcia Brady that everyone had of her made her feel trapped. People saw McCormick as confident and happy, but behind closed doors, she was struggling with nervousness and a huge sense of insecurity. She wrote later that not many people knew how scared she really was inside. Those emotional problems got worse after the show ended. McCormick eventually became hooked on cocaine and quaaludes. She abused drugs for years, which almost ruined her work and personal life. She later admitted that she went to parties at the Playboy Mansion where people were high on drugs. She even said that she missed out on a major role in Raiders of the Lost Ark because she wasn't in good enough shape to please Steven Spielberg. Lucky for her, she changed her ways in the mid-1980s, got sober, and finally found peace with the role that had been both her greatest gift and her biggest burden. The real truth about the cast of the Brady Bunch. The younger actors in the Brady Bunch had a hard time balancing their normal teenage lives with the stress of playing America's favorite family as the show went on. Sometimes, that balancing act led to things the creators would rather forget. Like many kids growing up in the early white 1970s, Barry Williams has freely admitted that he tried marijuana. The only difference was that one of those mistakes was shown on TV for all time. In the middle of what he thought was a day off, Williams was hanging out with friends when he was called back to the studio to film more scenes. He had no choice but to go to work, even though this drug was still making him feel bad. Williams laughed about the memory at a Brady Bunch gathering while admitting that he felt very bad about what he had done. Anyone who watches the 1973 episode Law and Disorder can tell the difference, he said. In later jokes, he said that the experience showed that he was a much better actor when he wasn't drunk. Some of television's tougher rules were also shown in the show. Many of these rules are hard to believe now. Fans who paid close attention eventually noticed that the kids shared a bathroom. The room never had a toilet that could be seen, even though 6 kids used it every day. At that time, TV networks still thought that showing a toilet bowl on TV was not appropriate for family shows. Instead of having to deal with awkward camera views every episode, the production team got rid of the toilet completely, which is one of the strangest design choices in the history of sitcoms. Carol Brady herself was involved in another riddle. Throughout the show, fans knew that Mike Brady had lost his wife, but they were never told what happened to Carol's first husband. Sherwood Schwartz originally wanted Carol to be divorced, and in early drafts, her married name was even written down as Martin. On the other hand, divorce was still a touchy subject for family TV, and network executives would rather not touch it. So, the show didn't say anything about what happened to Mr. Martin. Years later, Florence Henderson often used her trademark sense of humor to answer the never-ending questions, saying that Carol had just killed him. The young actors also became close friends, and sometimes those friendships turned into sweet childhood romances. After the fact, Susan Olsen, who played Cindy Brady, said that most of the Brady kids paired off at some point while they were filming. The young players naturally developed crushes on each other because they spent so much time together on set. Even though they were only 9, Olsen said that she and Mike Lookinland, who played Bobby, would sneak off to the doghouse set to kiss. As she talked about it, Eve Plum ended up dating Christopher Knight, and Barry Williams' relationship with Maureen McCormick became the most famous one among the cast. Even though these relationships were harmless, they were another reminder that, behind the perfect family on TV, were just regular kids growing up together. The terrible death that changed the Brady Bunch for good. But behind the scenes of the Brady Bunch, there were a lot of memorable bad things that happened that made the show what it was. Some of them were funny, some were sad, and some became TV tales that people still talk about today. The dramatic cry of "Oh my nose" by Marcia Brady in the famous episode "The Subject Was Noses" is one of the most memorable parts of the show. Filming the scene was a lot harder than imagined, even though it looks easy on screen. Christopher Knight, who played Peter Brady, had a lot of trouble throwing the ball correctly enough to hit Maureen McCormick at the right time. After a few failed efforts, producer Lloyd Schwartz stepped in to fix the issue himself. Schwartz launched a perfect spiral that hit McCormick's nose just as planned while standing just off camera. This allowed the production to get the famous moment on film in a single take. There weren't always happy endings to stories that happened behind the scenes. Even though filming for the day was over for the episode Catchy, in which Jan seems to be allergic to the Brady family's beloved dog Tiger, tragedy struck. The dog was let out by Tiger's trainer to do his usual exercise around the Paramount lot, but a passing car hit and killed the animal. In order to keep production from being held up, the trainer spent the whole night looking in local animal homes for a replacement that looked just like the original. The new dog looked a lot like Tiger at first, which fooled most of the cast. However, he didn't have the original dog's training, so the bright studio lights and constant noise scared him. During a sad scene where they said goodbye, the sub kept moving around and refusing to stay in place. His collar was tied to the floor so he would stay still while the cameras were rolling. This made it look like he was a calm and obedient family pet. It's funny that, even though the Brady Bunch is one of the most famous shows of all time, it was never a ratings powerhouse when it was first on TV. It never even made it to the Nielsen Top 30. Still, it did well enough that the studio made 5 seasons, which gave them enough episodes to sell to other networks. Reruns in the afternoon brought the Brady family to the attention of a whole new group of viewers, turning what had been a small hit into a cultural phenomenon that only grew bigger over time. Producers didn't worry as much about small narrative mistakes, because they didn't think the show would be popular for decades. The cars changed in strange ways between scenes. The hairstyles changed for no reason. A lot of the time, sets moved from one shot to the next. Susan Olsen stuck out her tongue while leaving one scene because she thought rehearsals were still going on. People used to think those small production flaws weren't important, but loyal fans who watched the show again and again through syndication, home video, and streaming loved finding them. This shows that even small mistakes can become part of television history. Why Robert Reed wouldn't film the last episode of The Brady Bunch. The producers of The Brady Bunch were already thinking about what would come next as the show's 5th and final season began. One episode took almost all of the attention away from the Brady family and showed a brand new family living next door. Ken Berry and Brooke Bundy played the Kelly family, who adopted 3 boys from the same orphanage. They were another blended family with a twist. At the time, the group was very diverse for TV. One child was white, another was African American, and the third was Asian American. The white son was actually played by Mike Lookinland's brother. The episode was meant to be a sneak peek at a possible TV show called Kelly's Kids. Sherwood Schwartz thought it was the right time because TV networks were planning to add more shows in the early evening and needed more family-friendly shows. If people liked the new family, the Brady Bunch would already be a way for them to get to know the spin-off. The project never went forward, no matter how hard everyone worked on it, and the Kelly family quietly vanished after that one appearance. A big star on the show was having problems of his own while producers looked for the next big thing. Few people ever knew about Robert Reed's private life, even though he played the dependable Mike Brady on TV. During a time when Hollywood was much less accepting, Reed hid the fact that he was gay because he was afraid that telling people would be bad for his job forever. A lot of people in the cast and team knew the truth, but they didn't say anything about it during the production. Florence Henderson thought about how hard that must have been for Reed after the fact. He was probably very angry over the years because he had to carry around the weight of living 2 lives. Henderson says that the way people thought about openness at the time made it nearly impossible for someone like Reed to be honest without putting their job at risk. She often told him she felt bad about the mental weight he was carrying while playing the perfect husband and father on TV. Reed was upset about things that weren't related to his personal life. As a classically trained Shakespearean actor, he often didn't agree with Sherwood Schwartz about how the show's stories were becoming more and more silly. Reed liked dramas with deeper themes, while Schwartz liked broad comedy and visual gags that families would enjoy. One of the longest-lasting problems behind the scenes was that they had different ideas about how to make art. Those disagreements came to a head during the filming of the episode that turned out to be the series finale. The episode was about Greg Brady accidentally dyeing his hair orange right before graduation, which Reed allegedly thought was a silly plot. He wasn't happy with the script and told them he wouldn't be able to join unless big changes were made. The producers didn't want to rewrite the show, so they called him out on it and just gave Mike Brady's lines to Carol and Alice. So, the man who had been the Brady family's rock for 5 seasons was not in the last episode of the original series. This made the ending of one of TV's most famous family sitcoms surprisingly sad. The last episode of the Brady Bunch. A lot of Brady Bunch fans think that one crazy scene in an episode marked the end of the cartoon. Greg Brady used a miracle hair tonic a few days before his high school graduation. It turned his hair bright orange overnight. For many fans, it was just another silly sitcom plot. But behind the scenes, the storyline caused the show's biggest star to be so angry that it caused an explosive standoff with producers. And the patriarch of the Brady family was not in the series finale. There have been reports for decades that that strange event was the reason why the Brady Bunch stopped being on TV. But the story behind what happened behind the cameras is much more interesting. The Harebrained Scheme, which aired on the 8th of March 1974, was the last episode of the Brady Bunch's first season. People in the story follow Bobby Brady as he tries to make extra cash by selling hair tonic. He tries to get Greg to try the product before his high school graduation so that he can help his older brother. The tonic doesn't make Greg's hair healthier, it turns it a bright orange color. His family is now in a mad dash to fix the mess before Greg's graduation. The episode was mostly about Greg's orange hair, but soon people noticed something even stranger. There was no sign of Mike Brady. The family's father had been there for all of the Brady kids' big moments over the past 5 seasons, but he wasn't there for one of the most important ones in Greg's life. Near the end of the show, Carol casually says that Mike is just out of town. However, many fans were left wondering what had really happened after a short explanation. Behind the scenes, the truth was coming out. Robert Reed, who played Mike Brady, didn't like the story at all right away. Throughout the series, Reed and the show's creator, Sherwood Schwartz, had many arguments about what Reed saw as storylines that were becoming more and more unrealistic. Reed, who was trained to play Shakespearean roles, liked realistic family dramas more than over-the-top comedies, and the orange hair plot was what finally broke him. Sherwood Schwartz says Reed showed up to the set and said he wasn't going to be in the episode. He stayed at the studio, but he wouldn't go in front of the cameras. In his autobiography, Barry Williams later confirmed that Reed thought the script was just not good enough for TV. Later, producer Lloyd Schwartz said that Reed's main complaint was easy to understand. It's not possible for hair tonic to make someone's hair turn bright orange overnight. They didn't rewrite the story. Instead, they went ahead without him. Mike Brady's lines were given to Carol and Alice instead, so filming could go on even though one of the main actors wasn't there. In a strange twist, almost no one knew they were making the last episode of the show. There is no proof that this episode or the famous orange hair scene caused ABC to cancel the Brady Bunch, despite rumors that have been going around for decades. The show never really did well with viewers when it was on its original network, but it became a huge hit after it started airing on other networks. When the Harebrained Scheme came out, the show already had enough episodes to make money from repeats, so ABC chose not to give it another season. Reed's decision not to appear and the show's quick cancellation caused a lot of controversy, which helped make one of TV's most persistent myths. It looked like one silly plot had ended the run of America's favorite TV family. It wasn't true that the scene got the Brady Bunch taken off the air, but it did show the tensions that had been building behind the scenes for years, making it the perfect way to end one of the most popular sitcoms of all time. Which episode of the Brady Bunch is still your favorite? Let us know what you think in the space below. Do not forget to share, like, and give your email address. Aldo, click on the next video that comes up. It will be fun for you.